Okay, let's unpack this. We're dropping into a universe where, the line between being unbelievably rich and completely broke is just razor thin.
Mm-hmm. And right now, for Captain Lando Calrissian, that razor is cutting deep into his wallet.
Deep. He's on this hot, dusty planetoid Ozeon, just pure misery. And he's got this new ship, the Millennium Falcon, but the pride of winning it is already getting buried under the bills.
It's classic buyer's remorse, but on a galactic scale. The maintenance, the fuel, the glory of that win is fading
The
fast.
source material really paints a picture of just how desperate he is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not about making a big score anymore. He just needs credits to, lift off.
Yeah, there's that one detail that's just perfect. It says he's so broke, he's considering draining his electric shaver into the ship's energy accumulators.
Just for a tiny bit of juice. That's the level of desperation we're talking about.
And that's what drives him back to the Sci-Fi table, which is, the very game that got him into this mess.
Right. And for anyone who doesn't know, Sawbuck is,
Mm-hmm.
it's pure stress. The cards, they're these electronic chips, and their faces just randomly change unless they're lying flat.
So you're constantly slapping them down, managing your hand, trying not to lose everything on a random electronic flicker. It's incredibly nerve-wracking.
So Lando needs a win, but he's losing, and then this distraction shows up, a man who becomes the key to this whole thing.
Ot Defa Asuno Wet.
Yes.
And Ot Defa is a title. It's important. It means he's like a professor, a top-tier academic. He's a research anthropologist.
But he's so annoying. The sources describe him as spindly, nervous, gray-headed, can't make a decision, and yet somehow his whole frustrating personality helps him win these small, consistent pots of money.
Lando just writes him off. He's a whiny distraction. But this is the guy who has the map, so to speak.
Exactly. After one of these small wins, Wet just blurts it out. He can't help himself. He starts rambling about the fabulous treasure of Rafa.
Or, as he corrects himself, the treasure of the Sharu.
And that one word, Sharu, just changes everything. The stakes go from a few credits to, well, to something ancient and galactic.
Yeah, because the Rafa system is already famous.
Hmm.
Not for treasure, but for these ruins. Another player at the table says it perfectly. The Sharu ruins are the biggest things ever built, and they cover every rock in that system bigger than his thumbnail.
And they're totally impenetrable. You can't scan them, you can't drill them, you can't even scratch them. They're just there.
So that's the immediate contradiction, right? How can you have a treasure from a people who vanished millions of years ago and left nothing behind but these giant, useless blocks?
But Wet insists. He's been studying the local natives on an Imperial grant, and he claims the ruins aren't the treasure. They're more like a memorial. The real prize is tied to something called the Mindharp.
And that's all Lando needs to hear. Sabak is over. He's locked on. This is the score that could solve everything.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to follow that rumor. We're going to trace it all the way down and uncover this, its incredible, dense, and frankly terrifying web of deception that the entire Rafa system is built on.
A deception that's been running for millions of years.
We're leaving the simple card game behind and jumping into an archaeological conspiracy on a planetary scale. It gets so much more complicated than Lando could ever imagine.
It really does. It makes you rethink what civilization even means.
Let's get right into it. Section 1. The Rafa system itself. What's the deal with this place before Lando even shows up?
Well, the Rafa system is a complete paradox. On the surface, it's this tropical paradise, but underneath, it's a humanitarian nightmare. It's known for three things.
Okay.
First, those ruins we mentioned. Giant, colorful, and impossible. Second, these things called life crystals. And third, the massive orchards where they grow the crystals.
Let's talk about the crystals because they sound like a miracle drug.
They pretty much are, or at least that's the reputation. They supposedly quadruple a human's life expectancy.
Quadruple.
Wow. I mean, just think about that. But it's not just living longer. They're also said to enhance your intelligence, or at least stop you from, going senile. And there's this weird side effect on your dreams.
So this is the most valuable commodity in the galaxy, basically. It's not just more life, it's more good life.
Exactly. But there's a catch, a huge one. They only grow in the Rafa system on the 11 planets and moons with just the right atmosphere and warmth.
Yeah, you can't just automate the harvesting.
No, it needs hands-on manual labor. And this is where the whole thing turns dark. The only way the light orchards are profitable is by using cheap, disposable labor.
Okay, so this is the horror you mentioned.
This is it. The labor force comes from two places, and both are just awful. First, you have prisoners, criminals, political undesirables, shipped in from, a million other systems. It's a massive penal colony.
And what happens to them? The sources mention a drainage effect.
Yeah, it's chilling. We don't know if it's the environment or the work itself, but something there is just hostile to the human mind. The prisoners. You'll degrade. Fast.
How fast?
Within a year or two, they become sub-idiots. That's the term used. They're still physically able to do the menial work, but their minds are just gone. Wiped clean. It's a system designed to crush any chance of an uprising before it can even start.
Industrial-scale brain drain. And the second labor source.
The locals, the Toka. The colonists call them the broken people.
And the descriptions are just heartbreaking.
They look old from the moment they're born. White hair, wrinkled skin, a stooped walk, like they're born into old age.
And the colonists see them as less than human, entirely devoid of intellect, passion, or will. They're just used as basic servants and laborers.
But, and this is the huge red flag, the thing that should tell you something is wrong, these same broken people have these incredibly complex religious rituals. Rituals that are all about the legends of the long-lost, super-advanced Sharu, and they identify with the Sharu. They see themselves as their descendants.
So how can a race with no intellect maintain these ancient, complex stories? It doesn't add up.
It absolutely doesn't. You can't be a sub-idiot and also be the guardian of a lost civilization's history. But Lando isn't thinking about that. He's thinking about money.
He lands the Falcon in Teguta Lucet on Rafa IV, and the system is waiting for him. He's arrested almost immediately.
And it's a complete setup. The charges are just a joke, a pile of bureaucratic nonsense designed to trap him.
It's a whole list. Unauthorized birthing, trade evasion, concealed weapon, assaulting an officer.
And my favorite, failing to pay a hotel bill. They throw everything at him so he has no way out.
The man behind it is Governor Dutsmol.
Mur is just a brute. He's described as a thickly muscled tree stump of a man. His only motivation is control.
But Lando reads him right away. He's not a genius, he's a bully.
Yeah.
Coward. And you get that amazing detail about his desk.
Oh, yeah. The desk is made entirely out of huge, unpolished life crystals.
He's literally using the material that could give hundreds of people longer, better lives as office furniture. It's the ultimate symbol of his corruption.
It is. But Mur isn't the real power here. He's just the warden. The real villain makes his entrance right then.
Roker Gepta, the sorcerer of Tund.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Wait.
Gepta doesn't use doors. He just appears in a column of shrieking blue-black smoke that dissolves into little orange sparks. He's all gray robes, and the only thing Lando can see are his eyes.
And the description of the eyes is unsettling. Twin whirling pools of insane hunger of some sort.
Gepta couldn't care less about Lando's fake crimes. He's been studying the Toka, their chants, their rituals. He knows the prophecy.
And Lando just walked right into it.
Perfectly. The prophecy says a dark adventurer will arrive, an intrepid star sailor with preternatural luck at games of chance.
That's Lando, the guy who won the Falcon at Sayback.
But there's more. The adventurer has to have a weird, inhuman companion in silvery armor arrayed.
And Lando just won Vufi Ra, the strange, starfish-shaped chrome droid.
And the final piece. The adventurer will have the Mindharp key. They've been waiting for this exact combination of person, companion, and artifact. Lando is no longer a criminal. He's a prophesied hero they need to manipulate.
He's gone from being a gambler to a pawn on a much, much bigger board, and his weird, inhuman companion is suddenly one of the most important pieces.
Which brings us right to Vufi Ra, and this is where things get really strange.
He's a Class 2 multiphasic robot, which basically means he's built to be almost human in his thinking and emotions.
But physically, he's just bizarre. He's about 1 meter tall, shaped like a starfish, with 5 long tentacles he uses for arms and legs, all shiny chromium.
Lando's first impression is that he's utterly tasteless, which, tells you a lot about Lando.
It does, and in the center of it all, a single, big, faceted red eye. But the key thing about Vufi Ra is his memory, or lack of it.
Right, he has amnesia. He was activated by mistake in a shipping container during a pirate attack.
So if his whole startup sequence got scrambled, he doesn't know where he came from or, crucially, what his original mission was.
But his core programming is intact, and that's where the conflict starts. He's this nearly sentient being, but he is fundamentally programmed against violence.
And that gets tested immediately when Mur's thugs are interrogating Lando.
It's a brutal scene. They're beating him, trying to break his will, and he's screaming for Vufi Ra to do something.
And the droid's response is just not what he expected. Vufi Ra just collapses.
Curls up into a little silver ball, and his red eye just goes dark.
Ew.
Total shutdown.
Later, he explains it. He says he's programmed never to harm a sentient being. He can't do it. He argues that people should use their wits, not violence, to solve problems.
So Lando's got a sidekick who is a moral compass, but is physically useless in a fight.
Yeah.
And this is the companion he needs to find the treasure.
A treasure that requires the key, this little gold artifact that Lando now has. And the key itself is weird.
What was it? It won't settle down in his field of vision.
Exactly. It looks like it has 2 prongs, then 3, then 4. It flickers. An optometrist's nightmare. It's not playing by the normal rules of physics.
So Gepta forces the Toka High Singer, a guy named Mose, to lead them to Rafa V, where the Mindharp is supposed to be.
They get there, and the scale of the Sharu architecture is it's overwhelming. There's this giant, lopsided pyramid, 1 kilometer high, and each of its 5 faces is a different brilliant color. Magenta, turquoise, apricot.
It's more like a mountain than a building. And as they're trying to land the Falcon, they get attacked.
But not by ships or blasters. They're attacked by these primitive crystal things. The book describes them as looking like cut glass plumber's helpers.
And Vufira figures out what they are.
Mid-attack, yeah. He realizes they're not weapons. They're the junk left over from the Sharu's first attempts at spaceflight millions of years ago.
So even their garbage is still dangerous and orbiting after all this time. The level in antiquity is just insane.
And that's when Mose, the Toka guide, springs his own trap. His savage cohorts attack with crossbows.
But here's that contradiction again. They're supposed to be sub-idiots, but they're incredibly good shots.
They're not trying to kill Lando, though. They're hurting him, firing arrows to cause pain and force him toward the pyramid. But they're very careful not to actually take him out.
And they specifically go after Vufira, pinning him to the ground.
Right, because Mose explains the rules of the ritual. They can't take the key from the key bearer, even if they think he's the wrong one. Lando has to be the one to open the lock.
So, under fire, Lando uses the weird, flickering key on the pyramid, gets inside, and everything changes. The laws of physics just go out the window.
This is the first really reality-bending moment. He's trapped inside for what feels like a couple of days. He wanders around in the dark. But when he gets out,
4 months have passed in the outside world.
a massive time distortion. The Sharu's power over time is just laid bare right there. And then Lando starts talking to the pyramid's main computer, which calls itself the Hall.
And the Hall starts explaining things, like why Lando and Mose shrank down when they entered, but Vufira actually got bigger for a while.
And its explanation is maybe one of the coolest sci-fi ideas ever. It asks him, what are you, no offense, sir, but organized information? What does it matter how densely that information is compressed?
We have to stop on that because that's everything. It's the core of how this Sharu technology works. It's not about shrinking matter. It's about data compression.
Exactly. It reframes living beings not as physical objects, but as data sets. Your body, your mind, it's all just organized information. And they can compress or decompress that information.
Which solves all the physics problems of shrinking. You know, the cube square law, where your own weight would crush you.
Right. If you're just compressed information, all the relationships between your cells and organs stay the same. It's like printing a book on super thin paper versus thick cardboard. The story, the information is identical.
It's a foundational technology. They can treat life itself as editable code.
And Vufira gets the worst of it. The giant planetary computer scans this complex, nearly sentient droid and classifies him as a small housekeeping device.
Like a Roomba.
Pretty much. And so it routes him for reprogramming and repair. He spends more than a day of his time wandering through these blue and scarlet maze-like rooms, which are basically just an ancient diagnostic loop for a vacuum cleaner.
That's the ultimate indignity.
Yeah.
And it tells you just how advanced the Sharu were, that a droid like Vufira is just a simple appliance to them.
And this realization that they're all just data sets up the next huge reveal, the truth about the Toka.
Right, and this starts with Mose. He gets separated from Lando. When he comes back, he's different.
He's blind. He walks out of this dark chamber and his eyes are gone. But he says he's exchanged his sight for a certain understanding.
It was a literal trade. He gave up his physical senses to get access to the stored knowledge.
And he has this incredible moment of clarity. He says, I was a retarded savage who could see, but did not know what it was I saw. Now I am an intelligent, civilized man who happens to be blind.
The Toka condition wasn't real. It was a mask.
A self-imposed one. And he proves his new intelligence immediately. He can pinpoint Lando's exact location, what he's holding, his physical state, just by using sound, smell, temperature. He says, pictures form themselves in my mind. He's building a perfect 3D model of the world in his head.
So Mose, now fully intelligent again, basically gives Lando the grand tour. He takes him into this huge, spiraling tunnel deep inside the planet.
And it's not just a tunnel, it's a museum, a history lesson built into the geology of the world. It shows the evolution of life on the planet, from single cells all the way up to the ancestors of the Sharu.
And Mose finally understands his whole life's purpose. The songs, the rituals. It was all an educational program designed to prepare an outsider, the key bearer, for this exact moment.
And then comes the truth that Lando has been piecing together, which Mose confirms. The Toka are the Sharu.
The broken, savage people are the hyper-advanced masters of the galaxy. They've been living in a devolved state on purpose.
For millions of years. And the reason is just cosmic terror. They were hiding from something so terrible that it liked to eat hyper-advanced cultures but wouldn't bother with savages.
A predator that only hunts at the top of the food chain. And they were so scared of it, they wiped every record of it. They don't even remember its name. Just the fear.
So they chose to commit cultural suicide to survive, and the mechanism for that survival is the entire system. All those giant ruins, the pyramids, the obelisks, they're not buildings.
A vast computer system.
The whole system is a hard drive, and what it stored was 3/4 of everybody's mind on the planet.
That's why the Tokas were like they were. Their intelligence, their personalities, their civilization.
Yeah.
It was all downloaded and stored away for safekeeping.
Leaving behind just these biological shells, capable only of basic survival and performing the rituals needed to wait for the signal to reawaken.
And this brings us back to those horrible life orchards.
Now we know their true purpose. They weren't for profit. They were created to suck the intelligence and life force out of the population.
To maintain the disguise.
Exactly. It was a control mechanism. If any of the Toka started to get too smart, too curious, the orchards would just drain that energy away, keeping everyone safely savage.
So the life crystals, the thing the whole galactic economy there was based on.
It's just a weird side effect. An accident. Their life-extending properties only worked when they were taken away from the trees and used by an outsider. The Sharu couldn't have cared less about it.
The layers of this are just...
It's
unbelievable. So finally, the Mindharp. What is it? Really.
It's not a musical instrument, it's the master key. It's the activation switch for the whole planetary computer. It's what tells the system to release all that stored consciousness and reboot the Sharu civilization.
And the legends, the prophecy. It was all bait. A carefully crafted lure to get someone like Lando, an outsider, to come and push the button for them.
To signal that it was finally safe to come out of hiding, Lando was never a hero in this story. He was just the final cog in a millions of years old machine.
And now he knows it. He knows the stakes, and he still needs to get out of there with a profit. Which takes us to the climax.
Lando, being Lando, immediately sees how he can use this insane technology to his advantage. He needs to get the actual Mindharp.
It's sitting on this huge altar made of life crystal. A featureless, difficult climb. So he uses the Hall's controls, the organized information tech.
He shrinks himself down to get to the harp, which is gigantic, and then he just shrinks the harp itself, compresses its information down to something he can carry.
He walks out of the pyramid, harp in hand, Vufi-Ra back to normal size, and they pop out into the streets of Tegudalusat 4 months later. And then betrayal.
Yeah, Vufi-Ra's original programming finally kicks in, the bit that was buried under the amnesia. He was programmed to help the authorities get the harp.
So as soon as Lando has it, Vufi-Ra does his duty. He calls the police.
Points a tentacle at Lando and just hands the Mindharp over to Governor Mur. Lando is thrown in jail. It's brutal. Vufi-Ra later admits he was programmed to betray you from the beginning.
But the irony is, this is the best thing that could have happened for Lando, because now you have Mur, the dumb, greedy bully, with the universe's most powerful device, just as Gepta, the smart, evil sorcerer, is about to show up.
Lando's in his cell, and he can hear the Toka outside chanting, and because of that educational tour in the tunnel, he understands it now. It's old Hytramic. He knows the reawakening is starting.
And Governor Mur, in a panic, decides to try and use the Mindharp himself. He just wants to control people's minds. His first attempt just causes massive earthquakes across the whole system.
But he doesn't care. He tries again, harder this time, and the harp's true function kicks in, the failsafe.
It's horrifying. Mur and the harp just start to melt. They fuse together in this radioactive, screaming blob. And at the same time, all across the system, on all 11 worlds, the giant Sharu buildings start to move.
They're melting, shifting, exploding. The stored intelligence, the minds of the Sharu are being regurgitated back into the Toka. The entire civilization is literally tearing its way out of the planet's crust.
It's total chaos. And in the middle of it, Ra has his moment of redemption.
His programmed betrayal is done. Now his loyalty to Lando takes over. He steals a police cruiser and breaks him out of jail.
And he reveals he did one other thing while Lando was inside the pyramid. He secretly repaired the Falcon's damaged ultralight drives.
The perfect escape plan. They blast their way to the Falcon and take off at top speed, right in the middle of a world being reborn.
Gepta tries to chase them, but Lando gets a few shots in, damaging his ship.
And even if he hadn't, Gepta was doomed. The planet itself is throwing off exploding chunks of ancient architecture. His ship gets taken out by flying debris from a reborn civilization.
Lando doesn't wait to see what happens next. He just gets out of there.
And he gets his payday, a huge one. Turns out, Mur and Gepta had Lando's full cargo of life crystals left on the Falcon, thinking they might need them to bargain with him. So Lando escapes with his life, his ship, and a fortune.
So what does this all mean? I mean, we started this deep dive with a guy trying to win a card game to pay his fuel bill. And we end with the resurrection of a multi-million-year-old civilization.
The sheer genius of the Sharu plan is, it's almost too big to comprehend. The beautiful, life-giving crystals were a side effect of a system of cultural suicide. The dumb natives were the smartest beings in the galaxy. The giant, dead buildings were actually the galaxy's biggest and oldest working computer.
It's that paradox of the Sharu that gets me. They were powerful enough to manipulate time and space, to treat life like data, but they were so terrified of something that they chose to become savages just to hide.
They performed the greatest act of technological humility in history. Their ultimate weapon wasn't a death ray, it was camouflage.
And now, thanks to Lando's luck and Ra's programming, they're back. The Sharu have been rebooted.
And that leaves us with the final chilling question. We know what the Tuskerku are afraid of, this thing that eats advanced civilizations. Lando didn't just find a treasure, he rang the dinner bell. So the question you should be asking yourself is, what was that unspeakable force, so terrifying it was erased from their own history, that scared a civilization of gods into hiding for eons? And is it still out there?